Greetings, my wonderful students. Today we discuss the Congress and the President, cooperation and conflict. Now, the President is elected by a national majority and promotes policies that they feel are in the best interest of the nation as a whole. Members of Congress are elected by populations of the states and the individual districts, and they promote policies that they feel are in the best interest of their states. This can cause a massive amount of conflict, as the ideas can be very different from each other. So this is a source of conflict, national level versus state and district level. Checks and balances. Now, both Congress and the President can act as a check on each other, and some political historians have stated the system is designed for deadlock and inaction, that the only way that legislation can move forward is if a large majority of people, both across the nation and in the various different districts, actually want that to move forward. And that this slowness is designed to protect the people from government gaining too much power. Party politics. When the President's party does not control Congress, it can cause gridlock or deadlock, a difficulty in moving forward different forces of legislation. Many times in the last few decades, Congress and the White House have been controlled by different parties. Organization is a cause of conflict. Even when congressional leaders support the President's policies, it can be difficult to push them through Congress. Legislation is drafted and shaped in committees, and they can significantly change or even kill a bill. The Senate also allows for unlimited debate, so even a minority party can stall or stop legislation from getting through the use of the filibuster. Differing political timetables. Presidents, senators, and representatives have different years per their terms. For example, the President is limited to 2 terms of 4 years each, while a senator has 6 years per term and can be re-elected indefinitely. This means that President has a limited window to push their agenda through, while senators can have more patience. The struggle for power. Curbing the President's emergency powers. In times of crisis, Congress had delegated powers to the President to deal with an emergency or situation. Strong presidents have challenged congressional supremacy and have assumed new powers for themselves. For example, Congress gave Franklin Roosevelt the power to close the banks in 1933. And during World War II, Congress gave the president power over wages, prices, and rationing of goods. These emergency powers remained with the president until 1976, when Congress passed the National Emergencies Act to end them. Presidents must notify Congress when they intend to declare a state of emergency, and those states of emergency cannot last more than 1 year unless the president repeats the process. Congress can now end any state of emergency by passing legislation that officially declares it ended. So as you can see, over the course of time, if powers are given to the president, but then not specifically taken away, then the president can continue to have those powers. So Congress must act in order to curb the powers of the president if they feel the president is gaining too much power. The Budget Impoundment and Control Act. Over time, the executive branch has assumed more responsibility for planning the national budget. In the 1970s, however, Congress passed the Congressional Budget and Impoundment Act to assert more control over the budget. This act created the Congressional Budget Office, the CBO, which provides financial experts to help Congress. This act also established permanent budget committees in each house of Congress and limited the power of the president to impound funds, to refuse to spend money that Congress had voted to spend on a program. This had been used all the way back in history by Thomas Jefferson, who had impounded funds that were designed to build Navy ships. And he did this because when they first went out to bid on Navy ships, the corporations that were building them had basically inflated the prices artificially to gain more money. And Jefferson realized that and did not spend any money, he said, until the better designs and cheaper designs were offered to him. The use of the legislative veto. As we discussed before, the legislative veto was a provision put into some laws that Congress passed that allowed them to review and cancel some actions of the president. Presidents complained that it violated the separation of powers, while Congress believed it was an effective check on executive authority. It began in 1932, and the Supreme Court ruled it to be unconstitutional in 1983. So it went on for over 50 years. The line item veto. In the mid-1990s, Congress passed a law that gave the president a limited ability to veto only portions or parts of a bill. After it was challenged in court, the Supreme Court ruled that that was unconstitutional as well. So as we see again, the Supreme Court is acting as umpire over powers of the president over Congress or powers of the Congress over president. The court stated that any such changes to the role of the president had to come from a constitutional amendment, not legislation. Whether it's adding extra powers to Congress or adding extra powers to the presidency, those have to be done at the constitutional level, not at basic legislative level. And that is the end of this particular slideshow.